Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys. We're almost together there.
Coming to you from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida. We are pre-recorded this week because Ron is on the Caribbean cruise. Some of us can do that.
Okay,
some of
enough
us can't.
with the...
Well, I got to explain why you're not here. But
I'm out of town.
You're out of town. Okay,
Yep.
Good enough. But we are streaming live on Facebook, so the comments that you want to make about the program that's coming on, we can still answer those live. Randy will be aboard. I'm back this week working on some of those comments as well. And so hopefully folks can get a hold of us that way. Or if you would prefer, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com is our email address. Thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. We've gotten some excellent feedback from there, and hopefully that can continue.
Yeah. We are going to continue. Let's see. You have a friend who is not quite on board with the FAIRtax.
Well, actually, I have a friend who I went to high school with him. His name was Martin Winfrey. We referred to him a little bit last week. And he sees a lot of the FAIRtax stuff that I post up on Facebook. And he was intellectually honest enough, I've got to give him credit, to actually say, I want to look into this thing rather than just simply, if Nancy Pelosi says it's a bad idea, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Or, if Mike Pence and Mike Huckabee like it, it's got to be bad for America. And we have seen stuff like that. Martin was at least intellectually honest enough to want to dig into the thing. And he asked some pretty good questions about it. And it occurred to me as I was, responding back to him on some of these things, and he was raising, well, what about this? What about this? How are we going to do? He thought that he had some misconceptions on the prebate, how it worked, made it a lot more complicated than it really is. But it occurred to me as I was talking with him, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
That's right.
The fact that some people, if you dig enough, there's no such thing as a perfect tax system unless you can find one where everybody pays nothing and the government is still fully funded.
There you
now,
go.
if you can figure out how to do that, you've got a perfect tax system. But do not let the fact that there may be some little things in the FAIRtax that some folks can point out become the enemy. Oh, we can't do this because somebody might set up a fake corporation and try to act like a company when they're not,
For instance, I had one person say, we talk about how the FAIRtax is collected. It's collected by the vendors, all right? And each vendor gets to keep 0.25% of what they collect and send on to the state. It's collected by the states from all the vendors in the state, and the state gets to keep 0.25% and send it when they send it to the federal treasury. I had a person tell me, well, 0.25% is not good. It needs to be more. That's something that can be debated in Congress when they're debating the bill. That's not something that's going to kill the entire plan.
If I had 0.25% of everything that Walmart sells, I would be happy.
Yeah.
That would work. So we're going to go through and try to compare not the FAIRtax to perfection. We're going to compare the FAIRtax to the current tax system that we have now.
Yes,
and
the awful reality of the income tax.
That's really the question. We'll give you up front that neither one is perfect, but I can guarantee you the FAIRtax has a lot less wrong with it than the income tax does.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some fun doing this, okay? You get to be Mr. Income Tax.
The bad guy. I have to play the bad guy to this week.
I get to be Mr. FAIRtax. So I will describe the system that I am advocating for, and you tell me which of the two systems you'd rather have, mine or his.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I back a system where you can bring home the full gross amount of your paycheck, no federal withholding, no payroll taxes. You can feed your family before you feed the government. What say you?
Oh, wait a minute. How is nobody's going to pay the tax. I mean, if the government doesn't take it out of your paycheck before you take it home, they're not going to get anything. The government's going to starve. It's going to collapse. Come on, that's crazy.
Oh, no. My family is my highest spending priority, not you.
Well, yeah, families are important, but I mean, you can't expect people to pay it. I mean, how they're going to pay it when they go to the store?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just crazy.
No, it isn't. I'll tell you what. Furthermore, the system that I advocate for, you will never have to fill out another tax return ever in your entire life.
Well, everybody's going to lie about their taxes.
There's no tax return to lie on. You do not have to save receipts. You do not have to decide what's deductible and what's not. You do not have to spend hours trying to even a fairly simple return. You don't have to buy TurboTax anymore. Sorry, those guys are going to have to find something else to deal. But I say let's not have any tax returns at all. Let's just pay your taxes at the cash register when you buy stuff, and the government doesn't have to know a thing about your personal finances. What say you?
Pay your taxes at the cash register?
Yes, sir.
Whoever heard of such a crazy idea? Is anybody doing that now?
Yeah, the state of Florida, the state of Texas, in fact, a lot of states have sales taxes. Some states, including Florida and Texas and Tennessee and a few others, have no income tax at all. They rely on that sales tax entirely. I've lived in Florida for 40 years now plus. I have yet to file a Florida tax return because there ain't no such thing.
So Florida doesn't have an income tax?
Correct.
And they still survive?
And we're doing just fine, sir.
I don't understand. How can you exist without an income tax? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, ask Florida and Tennessee and Texas and places like that don't have one.
By the way, folks, this is really hard for me to do.
Why do you think I gave you the big cube?
Yeah, we're going to need a nice big sub after this.
Oh, we'll go get one. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. If you adopt the tax system that I like, Mr. FAIRtax here.
But this is fun. I mean, we keep messing around with this.
I guarantee that you'll get a tax refund every month. Guaranteed. Every month, not once a year, maybe.
All right, now that's just crazy talk. The government's going to send you money every month?
No, they're going to give you back your own money that was collected from you that you don't owe.
Yeah, but there's no income tax. Nobody's paying the tax.
You're paying the FAIRtax at the cash register.
You keep saying that, but I don't know. I just don't see how that's possible. So they're going to pay at the cash register.
Yes.
But then the government's going to send them money back.
Yes. That's correct, because with the FAIRtax, the FAIRtax that I advocate for and you don't, is that you do not owe any tax at all until your spending rises above the poverty level. Now, obviously, we cannot track how much everybody spends, so we just simply assume that everybody will spend up to the poverty level. You know how much FAIRtax you will pay on that level of spending, and that is your refund. All you have to do is tell the Social Security Administration how many people are in your household, because that is what determines your poverty level. That's it. All you need to know, how many people are in your house, and whether you're in the continental United States or Alaska, Hawaii, there are different numbers for those guys as well. But once you know your household size, we know what the poverty level for your household size is, we know what 23% of that is, and that's what you get back, period.
Wait a minute. You're saying that the only thing you have to report is the number of people in your household?
Correct.
Come on. Come on. Nobody's going to believe that. That's way too simple. A tax code has to be complicated.
No,
you have
it doesn't.
to have, in order for it to work.
Where in the Constitution does it say that?
Well, I haven't found that part yet. But I'm sure that it can't be that simple. That just doesn't make sense. It's got to be complicated.
No.
And you got to have an agency that bears down on you and make sure that you.
Only somebody that likes something like this would say that. I'll tell you what. And speaking of your agency, my tax system has no IRS.
All right, now it's just crazy talk.
The Internal Revenue Service goes away because the income tax that it is charged with administering and enforcing goes away. There will be a small office within the Department of the Treasury somewhere to receive the funds from the states, because, again, it's collected by the states, and you do not have any enforcement at the federal level. The IRS can no longer take your paycheck because they think you might be doing something wrong. They can no longer take your house. And you advocate for a system where that happens, I'm ashamed of you.
It's just nuts. You got to have something like an IRS to make sure people are paying their taxes.
Why?
I mean, all this talk about going to the store and paying your taxes, I mean, that's just silly talk. I mean, you got to have an IRS that bears down on people and sends out really complicated tax returns.
Okay, Kimo.
That's the way you collect taxes.
Okay, Kimosabe, let me ask you something here. So you are actually advocating for a system where a huge federal agency has the power to freeze your bank account, just garnish your wages, even take your home without any due process at all. You think that's a good idea?
Well, You know, when you put it like that.
Do you like a big, powerful federal agency being used as a political weapon?
Political weapon?
Yeah, that means if you're not the party in power, the people that are opposing you, you can tax audit them and give them all kinds of issues.
Well, that goes back and forth every time we change administrations. I mean, you know, what's the big deal? You know, so it ruins a few people's lives. You know, big deal. You know, we got to collect the money for the government.
All right. Well, let me ask you something. Are you honestly advocating for a system where this big, powerful agency is the judge, jury, and executioner in deciding whether or not that big, huge, complicated tax return you have to send in is correct or not?
Well, somebody's got to do it.
Not if we don't have any tax returns.
Oh, yeah, you did say that,
No
didn't
tax
you?
returns here, guys. No tax returns. He wants to... And how would you like it if the burden of proof is on... There's no burden of proof at all to determine your tax return is accurate or not, because there isn't. But with your system, you think the burden of proof ought to be on the taxpayer to prove that the government's wrong, rather than the government proving the taxpayer is wrong. That's insane. That flies in the face of the Bill of Rights, sir.
Well, I think people overdo it with this Bill of Rights stuff anyways. I mean, you know, the government has to have its money, and it has to do what it has to do in order to get the money.
But if I'm not mistaken, this big, huge federal agency that you're advocating for has been shown, and it's been proven, that they will target innocent civilians, innocent taxpayers that don't have the resources to fight back. They just bully people. We don't bully anymore here.
Ooh, well, you're kind of making a point there.
We don't bully. You do. All right.
All right. Well, tell me some more about this crazy system, because
all right.
I'm still not convinced.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me run this by you here. How would you like to have a system where it is mathematically impossible not to pay your fair share? How many times have you seen rich folks stashing billions and not billions of dollars overseas, corporations going overseas so that their profits can't be taxed? It's just mathematically impossible not to pay your fair share. You like a system that's full of loopholes, full of deductions, full of exemptions, full of all kinds of garbage that your lobbyists have bought and paid for. And what is so good about that? Tell me, why is that a good idea?
Because people in Congress get rich doing that.
Give me a better reason than that. Go on.
Well, that's how they get rich. I mean, that's why we have, you know, 1/2 of the people in Congress are millionaires, unlike the rest of the country. How do you think they did it? I mean, this is really necessary to, you know, make sure that the Congress critters get rich, you know, on a regular basis.
No, but isn't it better to have a system where the more you spend, the more you pay in taxes? It's that simple. If you've got a lot of... See, we don't want a system where people that don't have a whole lot of money get a lot taken away from them. We let those that are just barely getting by not have to shoulder much of the tax burden at all. But folks that have a lot of money to spend on Learjets and steam locomotives and things like that, that they... Some people would buy those. But anyway, if you spend a lot of money, you pay a lot in taxes. No loopholes, no deductions, no special exemptions, except for education. Education is an investment in yourself, sir. You don't have to pay fair tax on that. But
okay, well, that's the only thing you said that makes sense.
No exemptions, no loopholes, no deductions. Everybody pays the same, and the poor is completely untaxed. What do you say about that?
Well, you know, protecting the poor is good, but, I mean, you know, you got to have something for Congress to do. I mean, if you have this fair tax, Congress doesn't have anything to do. They might as well go home.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. My tax system that I am advocating for is so simple the third grader can understand it. How about yours?
Well, no, it'd have to be a really genius third grader. In fact, I don't know of anybody that understands, you know, truly understands, but that's what the IRS is there for. They're there to help you. I mean, you call them up and they'll give you the answers.
How big is the tax code that you're advocating for?
I don't know, a few hundred pages?
A few hundred, my foot.
No?
How big is the tax code that you are advocating for, Mr. Income Tax?
Well, it's kind of large, but it has to be because...
Define kind of large. 50,000 pages?
Well, actually, I think it's a little larger. But
55,000 pages?
No, keep going.
60,000 pages?
Well, it used to be at one point.
70,000 pages? Do you realize how much 70,000 pages is? That's like 500 reams of paper. You think that's a good idea?
Well, it gives the tax agency something to do. I mean, they've got all these corporations that will help you with their taxes. So if you get rid of all that, what's going to happen to those little companies?
What's going to happen to this? Let me ask you this, Mr. Smarty Pants. If using your system of taxation, if you gave 50 different tax preparers the same set of information and asked them how much does this family owe, how many different answers should you get?
You should all get the same answer.
How many of them actually, how many times does that actually happen?
None.
So how many different answers do you really think you would get if you asked 50 different people what the same family owes in taxes? How many?
I know what you're going to say. There was that study by Money Magazine, and they got like 49 different answers out of 50 different, you know.
Yeah, I got a syringe full of truth serum here I'm going to use on you here in a minute. Yeah, 50 different tax preparers, 49 different answers. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. You do. Why?
Well, because that's the only way you're going to make sure that everybody pays their fair share.
Oh, no. You collect it at the cash register when people buy things. People have to buy things, right?
That'll never work.
Oh, you're full of garbage. All right.
I understand it works here in Florida, but it'll never work nationwide. I mean, they just can't do that. You got to have a complicated tax code. You got to have these exemptions for certain people, and you got to have privileges for people that, you know, like Congress people.
I'll tell you what. I'll get you with this one.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the tax system that I advocate for is almost impossible to evade. The tax is included in the price of things you buy. You do not have to report your income. You do not have to claim deductions. You do not have to do any of that stuff. You just pay the tax. It's included in the price you buy. You cannot evade it, because I can guarantee you, if you walk into Walmart and tell them you want to buy this big screen TV but you don't want to pay the sales tax, the clerk is going to laugh you out of the store, put the TV back on the shelf. You cannot evade the tax, because with my system, if somebody was actually going to evade it, it would take two people to do that, the person that's buying it and the person that's selling it. And if the person that's selling it has an incentive not to do that, in the fact that they get to keep, you know, a little percentage of what they collect from it, it's their incentive to charge the tax, not help somebody evade it. And your system, as far as evasion, your turn.
Well, what's the big deal about evasion? I mean, people are paying their taxes, aren't they? And if somebody's evading it, that's what the IRS is for. They got to go get those evaders. Yeah, Isn't that working?
But the IRS already admits that there are billions, with a B, billions of dollars that is owed and not collected.
Billions?
Billions. You're leaving money on the table, sir.
All right, just how many billions? 2 or 3 billion?
Oh, I don't know, close to 700, I think.
Ooh. Ooh, that's not good.
No, it's not good.
You could build a lot of walls with that.
Yes, you could. Why do you continue to advocate for the thing that is so error-prone, so fraud-prone, and is evaded like you wouldn't believe?
Because we've had this income tax for 106 years, and I'm comfortable with it.
How about the 100 and some years before they put the income tax in that worked fine?
Oh, well...
Gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I'm losing it here.
I can tell you that. Now, I'll tell you what. I'll get you on another point here. Listen,
okay.
Folks, if you like my tax system, the FAIRtax, if you like my tax system will not tax savings and investment ever. Savings and investment, the lifeblood of any healthy economy. And you know, when you tax something, you get less of it. So if you tax savings and investment like this guy wants to do, you will get less of it. You will get a less robust economy. And I like the idea of not taxing savings and investment. Actually, you will tax savings when it's spent, but not when it's saved.
I don't know. I mean, this.
If
you don't tax savings and investment, then that means there's just that much less for the IRS to do. I mean, you're going to put these people out of work.
Absolutely, I'm going to put the IRS out of work. How many of you would like to see that? Come on, let me see your hand. How many of you would like to see the IRS out of business? I would.
I have to admit, I've talked to a lot of people, and they really don't like the IRS.
I've heard from some people that work in the IRS that don't like the IRS, that say they would like to have the fair tax.
All right.
We heard from one here on the FAIRtax Power Radio not too long ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, well, okay, so you're not going to tax savings and investment.
No, I'm not.
Which means it's going to encourage savings and investment.
That's correct.
Which means there's going to be more money available for business startups.
Now you're catching on.
You know, I don't know. I'm just, you know, we've had this for 106 years. I don't know if we can change. I don't like change. I like staying the same.
I like the way it was before we had the. Do you realize that the founding fathers, in their infinite wisdom, said, no income tax here, because they had seen the results of what happens to income taxes in other places. They didn't want that to happen, and it took a constitutional amendment in 1913 to allow the income tax. Before that, it was unconstitutional, and it still should be unconstitutional.
Well, I don't know about this Constitution thing, but...
What? Did you hear that? People who like the income tax don't like the Constitution? Boy, have I got you on that one, bud. Let me ask you something else.
I think I'm going down for the third time here, folks.
Let me ask you something. All right, Smarty. Let me tie another concrete block around your ankles here. Where would you like to have major international corporations with all of the jobs that they bring? Would you rather have those major international corporations headquartered in the United States, or would you rather have them overseas? Who gets the jobs? Who would you prefer to get the jobs?
Well, I know that, you know, a lot of people would say, you know, bring them here to the United States, but wouldn't it get kind of crowded?
Oh, it might capsize?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it might capsize. I mean, with all those companies and all those people and all those jobs, I mean, we're going to be really crowded here. Isn't that going to be a problem? Okay, I'm grasping at straws here. I don't know what to say. This is clearly a losing battle.
I think we have nailed you on this one. So the idea, Mr. Income Tax, is to get rid of this. Can't throw my cube.
Yep.
And replace this.
This being the 9x9.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching and listening to the audio-only version, we are playing with Rubik's Cubes here. This is my 9x9 Furley Scramble Mr. Income Tax Cube.
Yeah.
And my little 2x2 FAIRtax Cube that is completely solved, no problems at all. And I would rather deal with the little one than the big one.
Put this close to my microphone, and when you hear that, that's the sound of the income tax getting more and more complicated. Yeah, and it just keeps going, like daily. Did we mention how many tax proposals?
Let's see.
This program airs the 30th. Now, as we're recording this a couple of weeks before that, and there were already, at that time, 60 proposals to change the tax code. By the time this program airs, who knows what it'll be up to be. And in the last Congress, the 115th Congress, there were over 1,700 proposals to change the tax code.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we've got 60
you can bet
already.
there was a lobbyist with campaign cash behind just about every one of them.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I don't want to do this anymore, Bob.
So I'm going to ask you, do you concede?
Absolutely. We should go with the FAIRtax because I don't want to do this anymore. This is really hard to do.
Oh, why do you think I gave you the hard part?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So, yes, well, advocating for the income tax when you've got a much simpler system is just insane. So, again, Martin and everybody else, you have your choice. The nice, simple, easy, anonymous FAIRtax, or the incredibly cumbersome, hard to get along with, the IRS hanging over your head, Bill of Rights busting IRS, who can come in and take your car, can take your house, can take your wages, can take anything, can be used as a political opponent if you happen to be of the other party, whoever's in the presidency at the time. That just goes away, and so the FAIRtax is much, it's not perfect. If you want to nitpick it, you can find it. Of course, a lot of people that try to nitpick the FAIRtax have to twist it into something else.
That it's not.
Before they really do.
Or you get the people, I remember I brought this up a couple episodes ago. There was a fellow who lives here in Florida where we do not have an income tax. Mm-hmm. And somebody was explaining the FAIRtax to him and explaining how it's a sales tax. Now, this fellow who lives in Florida said, it won't work.
Why not?
But he lives in Florida where it does work.
Yeah,
So, saying that a consumption tax for the United States won't work is crazy talk, because it does work. It works. There are 9 states that have a consumption tax, sales tax, and do not have an income tax. They're doing very well. And we're going to bring this up in another episode of FAIRtax Power Radio. We've got proof. We talked about this before, but we've got an article that spells out how people are leaving the high tax states, the tax punishing states, and going towards going towards the states that are more tax friendly, you might say.
And you scale that up to a planetary scale. The tax-friendly places get the jobs, they get the people that are having to flee these high taxes. I mean, if you run enough people out of New York and California, there's not going to be anybody left there to pay the tax.
That's right.
So it is shown on the small state level that those who have tax-friendly policies attract jobs, attract population, attract people. Those who have adverse ideas to doing that drive their people away. And if we want in the United States to bring jobs, to bring business to our shores, get rid of this income tax thing, replace it with a fair tax, and you will see the rocket fuel to the economy just light off like you wouldn't believe.
That's true. You can take a cue from France. They raised their top marginal tax rate to 75%.
Yeah, you see what's happening. They got folks protesting in the streets and throwing bombs and things. So
yeah, because the wealthy people, over a certain income, they just started leaving France. These very wealthy people are very, they can jump to another country real quick, if you're going to punish them that bad. So. Yeah, take a cue from France. They did it. They suffered for it. And like you say, they got the yellow vest protesters over there. Mm-hmm. It is not going well for them.
It is not. So again, a simple, fair, transparent consumption tax versus multiplied thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pages of tax code with the income tax. Even though the fair tax isn't perfect, Martin, I will agree to that. It is so much better than the income tax. We made him concede in less than 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, I'm wearing a FAIRtax shirt and a FAIRtax hat, so that really was difficult to do.
Where would somebody go to get a FAIRtax shirt or a FAIRtax hat or a FAIRtax pen or one of these little goodies?
Well, it just so happens we have a FAIRtax logo store, and you can find it at FAIRtaxLogoStore.org, FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. And there's all kinds of things, like we said, shirts, hats, jackets, umbrellas, little lunch buckets. These pins here you can get. The information cards, if you want to share your knowledge of the FAIRtax with people, you can order some of these FAIRtax palm cards.
I'll tell you what to do that. When somebody sends you spam email in one of those business reply envelopes, you send them one of those.
That's right. My wife loves doing that. Oh, she gets self-addressed envelopes. Here we come. All right. And by the time this episode airs, we should have some updated information. These prebate cards, they got basic information on one side. They got the prebate schedule on the other side. The prebate is the key to fairness of the FAIRtax, absolutely essential. And so you've got all kinds of ways to share information and show your support for the FAIRtax, and that's what we need. I know there's a lot of other talk going about the government shutdown, the wall, the this and that. We have to keep after our politicians about the FAIRtax. We have to keep after them and keep this drumbeat going, because at some point we're going to come back to tax reform. We didn't get tax reform.
Nope, we got tax relief.
That's right, we got tax relief. We did not get reform. Okay, we need real reform, and at some point the argument's going to come back to real reform, and we need to keep the drumbeat going about real reform, which is the FAIRtax.
That we do, and I'm thinking that with the new Democratic Congress trying to go after President Trump's tax returns, if we can convince him to go to a system where there are no tax returns, that might work.
Yep. Because that's nobody else's business anyways. I don't care if they're an elected official or not.
Oh, mercy.
I'm not choosing to share my tax return. My tax returns would be kind of boring anyways.
Oh, yeah, there's not much on mine either, but I tell you
what. No, that's private information. If the IRS doesn't find anything wrong with it, nobody else should. So forget it.
This was fun.
Yeah. Well, it's fun for you.
I enjoyed beating up on you today here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Fortunately for you, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Be with us again next week, same time, same channel, FairTax page on Facebook, and also excluded.tv. Check that out if you will. Until then, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Bolero.
The FairTax Guys reminding you that the FairTax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
We're the FairTax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the FairTax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
You'll demand it.
Yeah.
We got to get ready.